You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Friday, September 6th. We got football back last night in a hell of a game against the Chiefs and Ravens. Chiefs, unfortunately, still look really good, maybe even better than last year. I hate that for us, but the 49ers can make a statement of their own in a few days when they host the New York Jets on Monday Night Football. It's our first preview show of the season here on 49K, and joining me all year to preview the 49ers games is Kyle Posey of Niners Nation. How you doing, KP?
What's up? I'm doing well. Yeah, it feels good to have football back, right? How about kicking off the season last night with that game? Some of those times these openers are snoozers, and it was anything but.
Yeah, exactly. I was definitely expecting it to be an exciting one, and it did not disappoint. As far as the Niners game on Monday, I'm excited for that. You got Boys II Men singing the national anthem for that. You got 49ers legend Frank Gore getting his official induction of the 49ers Hall of Fame. And, of course, Monday Night Football. What more can you ask for? But before we get into previewing this matchup, of course, we got some injury questions regarding this game. So I'm going to bring in Desi. You guys know Desi from the off-season show, Wacky Wednesdays. And who better to ask about injury questions than Desi, right? So we're looking at the practice report from yesterday, Thursday's practice. The 49ers are practicing right now. We just don't have the official designations for those players. So as of right now, the guys who did not practice yesterday, defensive lineman Yetur Gross-Matos, Andy Winters, and then you got a couple of guys who were limited yesterday. Desi, I want to ask you about a couple of the limited guys, and I think the big question that everyone wanted to know about was Christian McCaffrey, because yesterday when Kyle Shanahan spoke to the media, he kind of slipped in. It's not just calf. He put calf/Achilles. And so a lot of people, of course, got a little worried about that. What can you tell us about, we're a little worried about it. Is there anything you could do to alleviate our worries about McCaffrey and having Achilles added to that designation?
There's a couple of things. I guess to bring the positive out first is Christian McCaffrey is that guy. Whenever I talk about injuries, it's twofold. One, you can be given recommendations by your trainers, your physical therapist, your medical team. But unless you're a very good patient and you follow those rules and you do all the things, then you don't get the outcome that everyone's seeking, right? And good news is I think Christian McCaffrey is a studious patient. He is someone that's going to take the recommendations. He's going to follow through, and not only follow through, but maybe even do beyond, right? He's really mindful about his practices. He's meticulous. And if anyone's going to come through and have 100%, be 100%, it's going to be Christian McCaffrey. So I'm going to leave that positivity out there. Now, are there reasons to be concerned? As 49er fans, we are still dealing with PTSD from when Dre Greenlaw tore his Achilles. We all literally saw it. If you ask some of us included, we'll say that was really the key, that was kind of our downfall and part of the reason why we didn't get the outcome we wanted there. Having said that, again, we don't know the extent of what this inflammation, this situation is with Christian McCaffrey. I am concerned because it has been ongoing for several weeks. And guys, this is the beginning of the season, right? We've got 17 games to get through before we even get to the postseason. So there is reason to worry. But again, I'm going to lean on the fact that Christian McCaffrey is we'll take everything that the medical staff and the training team give him, and he's going to do everything he can to be 100%.
Desi, I actually do have a question for you about that.
Yes.
So it has been ongoing for a while, basically since preseason started back in the beginning of August. Should we be concerned if this is still a thing, if he's still being listed into October, into November, or is this just going to be something that he's going to have to deal with all season?
I unfortunately would have to say it's possible. It's very possible. Achilles tendonitis is something that does not go away very easily. It is one of those nagging injuries, and I would not be surprised if it's something that maybe rears its ugly head here and there. good news is we've got JP Mason, which I think he's locked, loaded, ready to go. I think he's going to be a great running back too for the team. And Christian McCaffrey will be able to kind of rest a little easy knowing that he's got someone who can fill in that space there.
Okay, yeah. And for what it's worth, I mean, the coaches, John Lynch doesn't seem to be worried about McCaffrey. Everyone's saying that he looks like himself. So we'll take that for what it's worth. That seems positive, at least for him on Monday night. The last question I have is on Hufanga. I mean, Kyle Shanahan said there's a chance that Hufanga plays, but I think for some time, me and you have kind of been thinking it's obviously a long shot, right? You still feel that way about him?
I do. So it was just, I think, 2 weeks ago where they finally started to get cleared to be able to do football specific drills and things like that. And maybe it was 3 weeks ago now. But, you know, in the progression of coming back from an ACL repair, I think that he's right there. I think he's weeks away. I don't think it's this week. I would anticipate maybe 2 more weeks is my best guess. I haven't really laid eyes on him to see what it looks like with him doing football specific activities. But Huff is one of my favorite players. I'm really hopeful that, you know, the team will make sure that when he's cleared, he is ready to go. So I still think we're about, like I said, I'm going to say 2 weeks plus or minus is my guess as to when we might actually see him out there.
So he's a player with like an extensive injury history. Shouldn't they be overly cautious with him, especially coming off a season-ending knee injury? That's not the first, you know, serious lower body injury that he's had.
Yes. So whenever you have one, if you look at, let me see, who was it? Let's even look at, oh my goodness, who just ended his season with us, running back.
Elijah Mitchell.
Elijah Mitchell. If you look at his injury history, it's all right leg. Everything is right leg. Everything follows through a chain, right? So it's called the kinetic chain. When you hit your foot to the ground, that energy strike goes from the foot to the ankle to the knee to the hip, all the way up the spine. So when you tend to have an injury in one extremity, especially the lower extremity, you can guess that you may have issues that can develop in that entire extremity. So it is something to be, you know, thoughtful about. He's still young. That's what he's got going for him, is his age. When you're young, you can come back and repair, and you just heal a lot faster. So I'm going to stay hopeful that Hufanga is going to be just fine. But, you know, football is an aggressive sport. There are trauma level injuries that happen in football. So I agree. I would hope that, again, once they say he's cleared, they realize that our coach is Coach Kyle Shanahan. And when he says that a player is cleared, he's going to put them out there, and he's going to do, you know, no holds bars. It's not going to be putting him out there with, you know, little, you know, what do you call bubble tape or anything like that. He's out there and he's playing full throttle.
If we know anything about Kyle Shanahan, he does love to like wait till the last second to announce someone being out or in. And I think Hufanga is one of those cases because you just want to have the other team preparing for that player regardless. So I feel like that's the case with Huff. But Desi, thank you so much for joining us for the injuries today. And me and KP will take it from here. Thank you so much, Desi.
I appreciate it. Let's go. Monday night's right around the corner, guys.
Let's go.
Bang, bang.
All right, KP. So on the Jets side of things, it seems like, you know, they got a pretty clean bill of health. I know the one thing for them was Mike Williams coming back from a knee injury. I did see that Robert Saleh will have a similar approach to how they handled Breece Hall coming off of the post ACL. So maybe he might be on a pitch count, but for what is worth, he was a full participant for them on Thursday. But let's get into some of these matchups. And for those of you who haven't joined our preview shows before on 49K, usually I like to start with the not so favorable matchups for the 49ers. And then I like to end it on a high note. Because it's week one, because it's weird, we're also going to have some not so sure in this preview, just because there's a lot of unknowns still. But like I said, we're going to start off with the not so favorable matchups. Here we're taking a look at the Jets defense, obviously a really good defense. So one of my concerns, KP, for this game is the Jets defensive line. In 2023, they were 6 in sacks per game. They had 48 total on the year, and they added a familiar face to the mix, Javon Kinlaw. They also added Lakey Fotu, and they traded for Hassan Reddick. Reddick, of course, continues his holdout, so it doesn't look like he's going to be playing on Monday. That is a relief for the 49ers. But I do have to say this. The players that left in free agency, they accounted for 19.5 of the Jets' sacks in 2023. So, that's something that's important to note as well. But this still is a really good Jets defense and, of course, a really good Jets defensive line. And I know we have a lot of questions about the 49ers offensive line. You look at Quinnen Williams, he's going to be lining up against Aaron Banks, who, wasn't there much of training camp. Jake Brendel hasn't been like the greatest. So we're a little concerned about that. How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I mean, across the board, they're like Trent Williams is all pro, Hall of Fame level. Right underneath that is Quinnen Williams. Quinnen Williams really is that good. If I'm Kyle Shanahan, I'm having, double team. Like Brendel, your eyes go wherever he goes every time. Like he cannot be one-on-one, whether it's Aaron Banks, whether it's Dominic Puny. As far as the outside guys, not having Reddick is about as good as you can ask for, to open the season for the 49ers. They have some young guys who are athletic, but I don't think they've really established themselves enough to where, you're going to be too concerned. It should be favorable because you do have Trent on one side, so you can have help to Colt McKivitz, whether he's going against Will McDonald, Clemens, or the Jermaine Johnson, who's another first rounder. So it really should come down to, hey, if I'm going to lose this game, it's because Javon Kinlaw and Solomon Thomas got over on me. And if that's the way that I lose this game, then so be it. But, I mean, they just can't let Quinnen Williams have one of those game-wrecking games. Like, he's going to get his, right? All good players get theirs eventually over the course of a game. But it can't be one of those 2.5, 3 sack games where he's just living in the 49ers backfield. So I'm kind of interested to see how they offset it, whether it's, screens to McCaffrey, these quick hitting throws, or if they just do what they do and, kind of bite the bullet and see, hey, what is Quinnen Williams going to do? But like you mentioned, they did lose some production. They were very good last year. The Jets were 5th in pressure rate. The Niners offense was 17th in the same metric. I was watching Quinnen Williams a couple of days ago. He's insane, man. Over the last month of the season, he had 21 pressures just in 4 games. Like he just beats up on you every time. So you mentioned he's going to go against Aaron Banks. I wonder if the Jets, because like we saw like yesterday when Chris Jones saw the rookie for the Ravens come in, he just walked over to him. I wonder if Quinnen Williams is going to do the same, right? Hey, Dominic Puny's on the field. Let me go against the rookie. But Puny was awesome in the preseason. He was very good. He was almost like, he's a little too like, what's going on here? Why isn't he getting beat one-on-one? So it's going to be a hell of a step up in class for him because he's been going against, non-Nick Bosa caliber players. And now he goes against a player in the same class as Bosa and Williams. So it'll be really interesting to see how Puny looks because, like I said, he was as close to flawless as it gets during the month of August. And now he goes up against like a really good defensive line. And Salah, they do a really good job of moving guys around and running a bunch of different games where they're not static like we saw the 49ers defensive line last year.
Yeah, for sure. And that was my thought as well, that they're going to try to run some stunts to try to get Quinnen Williams matched up against Dominic Puny, try to see what he's made of. And we're going to find out, right? Like, yeah, he looked great in the preseason. I think we have a lot of confidence in him. But yeah, the Jets definitely going to try their luck on that one. And I just wanted to point this out too. The 49ers played 2 games against teams that ranked higher in sacks per game last season than the Jets, the Ravens and the Chiefs. So the Ravens last year were 1st and the Chiefs were 3rd. Purdy was sacked 4 times against Baltimore, sacked just once in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, but he was against heavy pressure in both of those games. So yeah, it's not like they can't scheme around the pressure that the Jets are going to bring. But it's like, how are they going to do that, right? So I'm sure Kyle Shanahan has some ideas, but this is definitely not so favorable matchup for me. And I'm just going to go ahead and also mention that the secondary and the corners of this Jets team is really good as well. And that's another concern for me, because I think obviously for Brock Purdy to be able to get the ball out quickly, he's going to have to find guys open quickly. And if these Jets corners are as good as they have been, I feel like that's going to make things a little difficult for him. They were fourth in passes defended last season in 1.9% touchdown rate to wide receivers. That was best in the league in 2023. And as a whole, they were third best in completion percentage allowed, second in yards per pass attempt allowed. And of course, Sauce Gardner is like pretty much the best corner in the game. So I imagine he's going to be lining up against Brandon Ayuk. And I have to say, Brandon Ayuk does look really good. Like all the clips of him at practice that I've seen from this week, like he looks very energetic. Like I don't feel like there's any rustiness there, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But I think even so, like this is a tough week 1 matchup for him, right?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. You don't want to come in not having any live reps and walk into like objectively one of the 2 best corners in the NFL. Like we'll see if Sauce Gardner follows Ayuk around. If I'm the Jets, I'm making sure that Ayuk's not going to beat me. I'm going to let, just like we talked about Quentin Williams, I'm going to let anybody else beat me. How wild is it that DJ Reed has kind of blossomed into this top 10, 15 corner when the 49ers had him? Like they had him, kind of just let him walk away. He goes to Seattle, has, a good couple years there. And then with the Jets, he's gotten even better. Reed he's always been like a really solid player, but to see him grow, it's been kind of interesting to watch. It's been kind of fun to watch.
Yeah.
Michael Carter, that's a guy that they're probably going to have to take advantage of. I think one of the things that Shanahan does a very good job of is he's going to shrink the field on you. So the 49ers, like they led the NFL at essentially playing between the numbers. So like they're going to have guys inside the numbers at all times, essentially. And what they're going to do is they're going to make one of the Jets linebackers, do a lot of the heavy lifting, do a lot of the coverage. They're not going to – this isn't going to be a game where DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner are targeted 10 times. And I think that's why the 49ers – I don't want to say don't have to worry about it, because that's not fair. Eventually you're going to have to throw the ball outside the numbers, but that's just not what they do. Like they're going to make sure, hey, if Sauce is going to live on this side of the field, why do I have to worry about that? Like I'm not going to target that side of the field. So there's going to be a ton of crossing routes, a ton of in-breaking routes, and that's how we see Ayuk lined up against Quincy Williams. We're going to see C.J. Mosley lined up against George Kittle, Deebo Samuel lined up against C.J. Mosley. So it'll be a lot of linebacker versus wide receiver, and that's where you see the 49ers have the advantage.
Yeah, and usually those are the shorter routes anyway, so that could give Brock Purdy the opportunity. He's not waiting for these like long developing routes. And so he can find the underneath stuff. I do think that will be there. And that kind of, reminds me of some of the favorable matchups that I have here. But before I get to that, just a real quick halftime here. Make sure that you guys download the Locker app, partnered up with them this season, joined the 49K League. Search 49K after downloading the Locker app. If you use the promo code LFG50, they'll match your deposit up to $50. So make sure you do that. Get some prop bets in. We're going to have a lot of fun with that this season. Now, I wanted to talk about the favorable matchups. And I do feel like this is kind of a sneaky one for the 49ers. Christian McCaffrey catching out of the backfield. So obviously, the obvious reasons, McCaffrey, huge weapon, led the league in touches, rushing yards last season, and obviously tied for touchdowns last season with 21 total. The Jets did allow just 4 yards per carry to opposing running backs. That was 10th best, but they also gave up a 23.9 target share to running backs. And I also saw this, that against cover 4, Christian McCaffrey had the second highest target share in this offense. Well, the Jets play a lot of cover 4, the second most of any team last season. So again, I feel like this could potentially be an opportunity for Christian McCaffrey to make some things happen.
Oh yeah. So if we're thinking the Jets are going to play this cover 4 type scheme, and like what the 49ers did last year more than ever under Kyle Shanahan was empty the backfield. Why? Because 23 on your screen right there, like that is a wide receiver who is going to get open one-on-one. So when you motion him out of the backfield, we're talking about McCaffrey now on a linebacker. And when McCaffrey is on a linebacker, he is going to win that 9 out of 10 times, if not 10 out of 10 times. When the 49ers did do that on third, so last year, 3rd and 3 or more, they ran empty more than any team in the NFL, more than ever under Kyle Shanahan. And they averaged 9.9 yards per play in those empty situations, which was also second in the NFL. And there's this idea that Brock is like a check down Charlie, which it's just not who he is. Like in these empty situations, he threw beyond the sticks more than any quarterback in the NFL, 64% of the time. So McCaffrey is going to get that option to run a route, whether it's left or right, 5 yards down the field, or he can probably run by you, which we saw more than ever. So I think he's going to have a prime opportunity to get over on a guy like Quincy Williams. So like when we're talking about cover 4, like the corners are probably going to be off. The safeties are going to be concerned about the intermediate 10 to 15 yards, which leaves a giant area of the field for McCaffrey to take advantage of. So I think he is in a very good situation. And when I'm talking about Quincy Williams, so he allowed 5.9 yards after the catch last year. So he's a very good player against the run. Like he's downhill, fast, aggressive, but he averaged 5.9 yards after the catch. He averaged 84.4 passer rating, and he averaged 3.8 yards of separation per next gen stat. So like he's probably not going to be able to stick with Christian McCaffrey. I feel like that's a very vanilla thing to say about any linebacker, but especially in this situation, knowing like when you walk out another guy in empty, it's going to be one-on-one because there's nobody else there for the linebacker to cover. So it is a very favorable matchup for McCaffrey in that sense.
And shout out Johnny Delman. If you guys haven't subscribed to his channel, make sure you guys do that. He has like some of the most comprehensive film reviews that I've ever seen, and he breaks it all down for you real easy. He says they play a lot of Palms 4. They're going to run a lot of CMC choice routes with Ayuk, a dig behind it. Really attacks the way they play their palms. So
like to talk through what Johnny's talking about. So they're going to be reading the cornerback's basically going to be reading like from high to low, right? From 1 to 2. And when you're running that Ayuk dig route, who's in a condensed, like when we're talking about shrinking the field, he's going to be in a condensed situation. And that just gives McCaffrey more space outside the numbers. So if Brock leads him, if Brock just throws an accurate ball, which he does often, that's when you have McCaffrey, and that's when you allow him to make yards after the catch or to basically create on his own. It's a very difficult matchup. And then if they want to jump these short routes, that's when you can hit Ayuk right behind him, and then that's when Ayuk gets a head start. So this offense is a pain in the ass to stop just because of these situations and because of the playmakers they have. A lot of what the Chiefs did last night with Rashee Rice, when he's like in those condensed situations and he's matched up against a linebacker, whether it's McCaffrey, whether it's Ayuk, like the 49ers should have a lot of those same opportunities on Monday.
Yeah, they were cooking up with Rashee Rice on those plays. And as far as Christian McCaffrey goes, if he does get a touchdown reception Monday night, he will be one of 3 players with 50 career rushing touchdowns and 30 career receiving touchdowns. I definitely feel like that's in the cards for McCaffrey as soon as week 1. And I don't know if Kyle Shanahan even knows that he's close to getting this, but if he does, I'm sure he'll try to scheme something up for him to get this. So just a little fun underlying thing to keep tabs on Monday night. I have another favorable matchup here, and this one I actually kind of have heard from Jets fans themselves. They kind of feel like they're susceptible to tight ends, their defenses. So I'm feeling like this could potentially be a George Kittle game. And Kittle last season, he had 15.7 yards per reception. That was a career high for him. As far as yardage goes, like the Jets gave up an average of 50 yards per game to tight ends, but they allowed 8 total touchdowns to tight ends last season. Just for comparison, like the 49ers gave up 4. So yeah, a 6.6 touchdown rate to tight ends. That was 27th in the league. So this does definitely feel like something that, could go under the radar for the Jets defense. You're covering all these other guys you got to be aware of, like McCaffrey, like Ayuk, Debo. And sometimes, Kittle can put together a good game if they forget about him.
I think like if I'm Shanahan heading into the season, and you don't want to like say like, hey, I'm going to do this between the 20s and I'm going to do this when I get in the red zone. Like football doesn't work that way. But if you remember when Brock first took over in 2022, like they leaned on Kittle quite a bit early on. And I would do that, especially in the red zone. I think he could have a lot of success, not just Monday night, but all season in the red zone. Like he would be my go-to target in the red zone. He's just faster than anybody guarding him. I know that really dumbs it down, and there's a lot more to it than that, but he's bigger and faster than the guys usually guarding him. And he can run away from people, and you see a lot of man coverage down in the red zone. So I use the little eye candy they have, the motion, and then rely on Kittle in the passing game down to the red zone. I think he has a chance to surpass double-digit touchdowns, and it'll be interesting to see how they attack the Jets defense because they do run a lot of those combination coverages that Johnny was talking about, but the high-low stuff that Shanahan really leans on should favor Kittle, especially in the red zone.
Yeah, for sure. One big game that they allowed to a tight end last season was David Njoku had 134 yards against them in week 17. So it wasn't too long ago. So if they haven't improved in that area, Kittle could definitely exploit that matchup there. So I'm definitely liking that one for the 49ers. Quick look at the Jets offense. Obviously, we're going to see this offense with Aaron Rodgers as the quarterback. And, obviously Garrett Wilson, one of the best wide receivers in the game. So that'll be a good matchup. But for some reason, I'm not as worried about the 49ers corners just because I see them as one of the top corners in the game too with Mooney Ward and Diamador Lenore. So yes, there's going to be some wins, some losses for whoever is lining up against Garrett Wilson. I do think he's the kind of guy who's going to get his. Aaron Rodgers loves to target a wide receiver one. Obviously that's Wilson. But I think I don't see it as the type of matchup that's going to ruin the game for the 49ers.
One of the few good things that Steve Wilks did last year was basically bait teams into throwing Mooney's way. He was one of the most targeted, if not the most targeted cornerback, but he only allowed like a 52% completion percentage. So I'll be interested to see if Sorensen does similar things to that and where he's just like, hey, I'm going to shade my safeties this way, and I'm going to make you think that you have a favorable matchup when you're one-on-one with 7. But he's such a competitive player. He's usually always in position. Obviously, he has great length. He has the speed to run with anybody, and he can change direction. Like Charvarius essentially has everything you want in a cornerback, not to mention like the mindset he has against the run. So I am kind of fascinated to see if his usage changes this year. During training camp, Diamador Lenore was arguably one of the best players on defense. He's really come a long way. Isaac Gidham, like he's a guy who was very good, like quietly good last year with the Saints. I would prefer to go his way over Renardo Green just because, again, a rookie, you don't want to throw him out there. Like, hey, Renardo, go guard Garrett Wilson in your first game. Like that's not exactly an easy landing spot out of the gate. But this has a chance to be the best secondary the 49ers have had, especially if they're able to get Hufanga back within the first month of the season, just so he can kind of figure out, get his legs underneath him, get back up to playing shape. But I think Jair Brown has a chance to make a lot of plays this year too. He had a ton of it. He had probably 10 interceptions or so during training camp. He was all over the place. It almost seemed like he knew what plays were coming because he was making so many plays on the ball. Again, his usage this year, just in preseason and looking at practice and training camp, was worlds different than it was last year. I think Wilkes did him a disservice, but basically playing him near the line of scrimmage so much. I think his best position, just like it was in college when he led the league when he led the country in interceptions, was just roaming over the middle of the field. You just got to let his instincts take over and let him make plays. Both him and Hufanga are kind of similar in that sense. So the safety play should be better just because they have two guys who can make plays, and they should be able to tackle in the open field, and not to mention the corners on the outside. And if it does get to a point of concern with Lenore, you can just shade safeties there his way, like Wilkes did last year. So very high in the secondary this year. And I think that'll be the reason the 49ers are going. The defense is better than people think it will be just because of the back end.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think the secondary is going to be one of the better ones in the league. And you mentioned two players that I expect to be two of the best on the defense this year, and that is Lenore and Jair Brown. And so I'm excited for that. Those to me are guys I'm very confident in going into the season, and those feel like sure things. But there's a lot of things I'm unsure about with this team, and some of them do surround the defense. So one of my not so sure, I guess, matchups in this game is the 49ers defensive line against the Jets offensive line. So the Jets had one of the worst offensive lines last season. I do feel like part of the quarterback play after Aaron Rodgers went down did contribute to that, but even still pretty bad. This offseason, they added Morgan Moses, John Simpson, and Tyron Smith to their offensive line. Obviously, they're looking for improvements. So 3 new starters on their offensive line. Elijah Vera Tucker is the mainstay, and he's been awesome for them. But I guess being that they have so many new pieces on the offensive line, one thing that could go either way is I just know that with offensive line play, when you have a lot of new pieces, you need some time to gel, to build chemistry, to know you guys are all on the same page. I do feel like the 49ers last season going into that one had a lot of new starters too, but they figured it out and they kind of went through those bumps. They won week 1. They won 5 in a row to start the season. So I'm not saying this could be a make or break thing for the Jets offensive line. But I guess going up against the 49ers defensive line, probably a pretty big test for that new group of offensive linemen. And so I could see this going either way. Obviously, I really love Nick Bosa and I really love Leonard Floyd, what they could bring to this team and creating pressure for Rodgers, who I think is going to be a sitting duck this season. I don't really know how to feel about this one. I think it could go either way, but I do like the 49ers chances.
So Javon Hargrave just has to play more, I think. Last year, he played fewer snaps than he did the previous 2 seasons. They paid him a ton of money not to be this quote unquote rotational guy. If the 49ers have 60 plays, Hargrave should probably play 45 to 50 of those, not closer to 35 to 40, which is what he did last year. So, and he talked about it this offseason where he just has to increase his stamina so he can be on the field more. I think that's one thing to look at. Gross-Matos has to be healthy. They brought him over and they paid him money to be that interior pass rusher. That way you can have Bosa, Hargrave, Gross-Matos, and Floyd all on the field on the same time. And that's where you're able to get creative and you can look more like the 2022 defensive line when they were able to rush Charles Omenihu inside. So you need those athletic mismatches because Gross-Matos is a very good athlete and he just gives you a different look than one of those bigger body defensive tackles like Collins or Jordan Elliott. So Gross-Matos' health is important. Hargrave's stamina is important. Nick Bosa, what is there to say? We all know he's going to do his thing. He always has. He's going to have to take advantage of an older Tyron Smith. He's going to have to beat Morgan Moses when he gets the opportunity. Floyd, I don't know what to make of him. Obviously, he's had a very successful career. He always gets sacks. He's always around the quarterback. His pressure rate's usually up there. I guess there's no real reason to think that'll be any different, especially playing alongside Nick Bosa. I think I just want to see it in action. I want to see how he looks. So I wonder if we see more Fred Warner as a pass rusher as the 49ers try to figure out what these new defensive linemen can do. Because Warner arguably has been one of their top 3 pass rushers over the past 3 seasons. So why change that now, especially when you want to get aggressive and blitz? So I think there's more questions and it's just more of what can we do? What are we able to get away with? What can we do up front? And maybe because we were just talking about the secondary, maybe because they are higher on the secondary, it'll allow Sorensen to be more aggressive. But I think it's kind of a wait and see approach with a lot of these things in the front 7.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point about, some blitzes with Fred, I could definitely see that. I noticed also a lot of corner and safety blitzes during camp, even in the preseason. So I'm sure they mix some of that in as well. But I will say it seems like Nick Bosa is pretty confident about what this defensive line could do this year. He talked up this defensive line, some of the new pieces. He says, quote, "It's pretty much all new guys except me and Javon Hargrave and Robert Beal. We know the scheme really well, but I really like the new guys. I think we've improved. I think Leonard Floyd brings something to our defense that we haven't had, a guy who can make plays all over the field and he doesn't get tired. I'm excited," end quote. I mean,
that's a shot at somebody. Is that a subtle shot?
It definitely well, I don't know, right? But it definitely
He
feels
doesn't
like
get
maybe
tired.
there's a lot of rotations last season, maybe too many rotations, last season.
That's fair.
So, and he did kind of talk about that as well, but it seems like there'll be more cohesion with the defensive line this season, which is huge. You talk about Gross Matos. I don't think we're expecting him to be out there in week
Right.
1, but of course, when he is out there, that will be a huge boost for the team as well. I am expecting big things from him, but at least you got a guy like Leonard Floyd who apparently doesn't get tired, so he'll probably
no pressure.
he'll probably be out there much of the time, and I'm sure Aaron Rodgers will be very mindful of where he is at all times. All right, another not so sure matchup for me is the 49ers run defense, right? And obviously, maybe this is not the greatest game to use as a measuring stick for what we think this run defense will be this season, because Breece Hall, like, honestly, is one of the better running backs in the game. But we know that run defense is a concern for this team. They allowed 3.09 yards after contact. That was 24th in the league last season. And they allowed a first down or touchdown on nearly 25% of runs out of the backfield. And so that's the one thing in this matchup that I'm not so sure how this is going to go, because Breece Hall, like I said, one of the best. Jets, very committed to running the football, even more so in week 1 without Aaron Rodgers playing in the preseason, with Aaron Rodgers not playing like all of last year. They're really going to lean on the run game. And so how the 49ers respond to that, I think, is going to be really important. And I'm worried more so about runs on the outside. I think like the guys that they have on the inside, on the interior, I think are cloggers. But those outside runs is everyone going to be quick enough to get those tackles? I guess that's kind of a toss up for me.
Yeah, I think this is where you're going to see the loss of Eric Armstead really shine, because I think he was able to kind of mask a lot of issues, and he missed a big chunk of the season. So last year, just speaking like in efficiency terms, the 49ers were 19th against the run. They were 29th in rush stopping the run in the red zone. They were 27th when they had a light box. They were 24th on quarterback design runs, which we don't have to worry about this year. But they're actually 26th against rushing inside the tackles. So with no Dre Greenlaw, which is a massive loss, and who knows how long it's going to be. Hopefully it's temporary, but like, he is a player who I think freed up Fred Warner so much against the run. Like, Greenlaw is just a ferocious player. He comes down, he takes on blocks, and I mentioned Armstead. Armstead just eats blocks. So we'll see if Collins is able to do that and make plays, if Elliott is able to do that and make plays. Like, there's a difference. Armstead was able to not just eat those blocks, he was able to beat blocks too and make plays against the run. And that's where, again, Hargrave's going to have to be better against the run, not just as a pass rusher. So I don't know, because if we're just going based off what we saw last year, the 49ers struggled mightily against the run. You mentioned like Breece Hall, one of the fastest players with the ball in his hands. You give him a lane, and it's going to be tough. Yeah, the yards after contact is something to worry about too, just because like I have some concerns about Devondre Campbell, and it didn't look great in the preseason. And I mentioned what Dre was able to do for Fred. I don't think Campbell's going to be able to do the same thing. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully he's, a monster and he's able to clean up and make up a bunch of tackles around the line of scrimmage. But I think the evidence isn't there. So like, it's going to have to be, I will believe it when I see it. Again, the offense was able to mask a lot of these run defense issues for the 49ers just because they scored so many points. Hopefully that's the case again, not just week 1, but over the course of the season. But stopping the run is going to be an issue. There's no doubt about it. They're going to have to win on early downs for sure.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you actually about Devondre Campbell, because he is kind of an unknown for me too going into it. He looked fine to me in like the last preseason game, but I didn't really notice much of him in the previous 2. So don't really know what to expect out of him. Obviously, not encouraged by you saying that, he didn't
they're using him exactly the opposite of how the Packers used him last year. So he would actually come off the field in passing situations last year. And with the 49ers, like, they're using him as their will linebacker, as their nickel. So, yeah, I don't know, man. And when I talk about Fred Warner rushing the passer, that leaves Campbell susceptible. Like now he's going to be one-on-one against a running back or a tight end. And honestly, like being so high on Jordan Mason in the preseason, like he was catching these passes on Campbell out of the backfield. So like, again, we'll see. If I'm Sorensen and I don't like what I see out of Campbell early on, don't be afraid to pivot and get that extra defensive back in there. Again, it would help if Hufanga was healthy. That way you can use him as like kind of that dime linebacker. But it'll be kind of a work in progress, I think, for Sorensen. He's gonna have to get to know his personnel, and not just from like the last month, but in these live game reps. So like how quickly he pivots is going to be important. Remember last year it took Steve Wilkes half the season to pull Isaiah Oliver. So he just can't be married to these players that long.
Yeah, and I read your latest piece on Niners Nation. If you guys haven't checked that out, go and do that. It's titled How the Past 5 Years Have Shaped the 49ers and Prepared Them for the 2024 Season. I think you kind of touched on that in that piece, KP. And yeah, I definitely agree. Like Sorensen is going to have to figure out this defense as the season goes on, and what kind of works and what doesn't, what players you like in certain situations, which ones you don't. So it's going to be a learning experience for him, even Brandon Staley. So I think it's definitely going to be interesting for this team. We have one final question here from Technic Chic. Might be getting ahead, but do you think the 49ers D-line do more of stunts games this year since A, they're going back to a more D'Amico Salas scheme, and B, heard Malik Collins is good at that?
He was very good at that with the Texans. I'm sure when Kyle Shanahan spoke to D'Amico on the phone, he asked some very specific questions like, hey, how is he on the move? And you kind of saw it if you would watch the Texans, that's how they would use him. Most of his pressures actually came from looping around and not winning one-on-one. So, again, it's going to come down to who Sorensen feels comfortable using, because when D'Amico did it in 2022, he would have like arms set out wide, and then in the middle it would be Bosa, Omenihu, and player X, whoever that was. And that's how they would create a bunch of chaos and pressure. So if that player is Gross Matos, that would probably be the best as far as mismatch goes, because during one-on-ones, Gross Matos, like his get off, like his athleticism stands out above everybody else. So like that is a player that they need to have healthy, and then not so much in September compared to December.
Yeah, really excited to see what unfolds with this defensive line. Now, want to do some score predictions. KP, I've been predicting that this is going to be a low-scoring game, and a lot of people hate that because they're like, no, like there's no way. But I just look at both of these defenses and how good they are. I get like the 49ers offense is way ahead of the Jets defense at this point in time, but I do have a lot of respect for the Jets defense. So I'm predicting it to be a low-scoring one, which I know is boring for a Monday night game. My score prediction is 10-7.
Whoa.
Yeah, I get maybe that's too low-scoring is what people have been hinting at, but that I'm sticking to it because that's just what I've been saying this whole week. So I'm happy to be wrong about that one. Happy to be wrong. The over-under is 44. In any case, I'd still hit that under. What about you?
So my prediction is, I would say 23-20 49ers. That's what I was going to go with. I didn't know that was a total, so that's perfect. Under still. We're usually just like last night, right? These offenses, these coaches, they've had 6 months to prepare an opening script. Like they've been thinking, like, how am I going to get ahead on this defense? So like we're probably going to see some early points, and then we're going to see it slow down. The 49ers have the best offense in the NFL. They have the best weapons, the best skilled players. Like it's going to be very difficult, whether they're playing the Jets, Bills, Dolphins, like whoever, to slow them down every drive. But the Jets really are that good, and they do have some concerns. And Saleh knows this roster. So it's not going to be a game where they're scoring 35 with ease as they did last year, where they're scoring 28 in the first half. But at the same time, like I said, like there are just so many ways for them to get over on other teams, like the mismatches. I really think they're going to have some success moving the ball on the intermediate part of the field. It might not be like these explosive plays like Brent Ayuk running slot fades against the Buccaneers last year and scoring on a 63-yarder or whatever, but 10, 12, 15, like those little intermediate chunk plays. but it's going to come down to red zone effectiveness. If the 49ers can stop the run in the red zone, they'll be okay. If not, it's going to be a long afternoon and 20 might seem low. Who knows how effective Aaron Rodgers is too, right? He hasn't played football in forever. Sure, he's practicing, but he hasn't practiced with Nick Bosa on the other side of the field, right? Garrett Wilson and Mike Williams, they've gone against great corners in practice, but they know each other by now. So I think they're going to see some different looks. And I would imagine the 49ers bow up in the red zone defensively. Like, we'll see how they are on the other side of the ball. So I think we're going to see a little field goal fest in the second half after some early scoring. So I like the 49ers to win 23-20.
Okay. I definitely like your prediction. That would definitely make for a more exciting Monday night game for sure. But yeah, definitely looking forward to this one and answering some questions about, some of the unknowns about this 49ers team that we have. But there's plenty of knowns, and I like those for the 49ers. I think it works in their favor. KP, thank you so much for joining me for our first preview of the season. Really excited to get back into the swing of the grind of the season. I'm sure you are as well. Everyone that tuned in, thank you so much. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Audio listeners, leave a rating, leave a review. But for now, have a good rest of your Friday, folks. Enjoy that game on Monday night. Peace.